We're at 2 after the hour, and so just a couple of logistics, and I'm going to turn it over to today's our host Jen and our special guest today, Dan. But just a few things to keep in mind as people are continue to join. For today's session, use the QA panel to ask all your questions. You can place them there. We'll then go and tee those up for the tail end of the presentation. Dan's got a lot of stuff that's awesome that he needs to get through and present. But certainly we want to take those questions as you have them, and we'll tee those up, and then we'll make sure that we address those at the end. So that's the first thing. The second is today's session is being recorded. I'll be placing the recording up on our blog at https:/aka.ms/HLS blog. That's aka.ms/HLS blog. And I'll put that into the QA as well, both in just a moment and at the tail end. But you'll be able to get the presentation and then resource and links that we'll have up there. So again, QA panel. Yes, this will be posted to the blog after the fact, and I don't want to take up any more of the valuable time that we have today because I'm excited to hear everything. So I'm going to go off and go on to mute. I'll continue to admit people, and I'll be moderating the chat in the QA panel. With that, have a great session, everybody.
Thank you, Mike. Really appreciate that intro, and welcome, everybody. I think you probably heard Mike's excitement about this. We are all very excited about today's session. We're very grateful that you came to join us as well. My name's Jen Myers. I help healthcare organizations with their employee engagement strategies, and I feel very lucky to introduce Dan Holme. Dan is a product leader for our Viva and Viva Engage solutions, and he's spoken to, I think, and it may be literal, Dan, I think hundreds of organizations about their employee communication strategies. And he's going to bring some of that context to us today from their experiences and learnings and what we're seeing. So Dan, there's a couple of reasons, and I guess this is for everybody, there's a couple of reasons why we wanted you to host today's session. First, and I think we all can kind of relate to this statement and maybe feel it, there's been kind of this massive shift in work. And it doesn't matter, the industry we're in. It feels like time is getting faster and faster. And for all the organizations that I've talked to, it seems like it's really challenging to capture the hearts and minds of our workforce. How do we keep them engaged? How do we keep them connected to the mission of our organization? How do we communicate the right way to do that? And a lot of the customer conversations that I've had, they're looking for new strategies to do this. And they're finding that some of the old ways of communication aren't working as well. And there's probably a lot of reasons for that. I think one of those, and if you look at who's in the workforce today, we have multiple generations in the workforce at the same time. Everybody has different preferences for how they want to be communicated with. So we would love to hear from you about, what are some of the strategies that we are seeing, those organizations who have adopted those strategies, what kind of benefits are they seeing, and what are some of these new approaches? We would love to learn more from you about that.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Jen. And I assume you're able to hear me okay? And see my screen?
We can.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to share with you this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are. My name is Dan Holme. As Jen said, I am a product leader on the Viva Engage team, and I've been spending a lot of time helping communicators understand how they can modernize their strategy for communicating with and engaging their workforce for all the reasons Jen said. Jen used a key word, which was engagement. And at Microsoft, we strongly believe that it is engagement. It is having an energized, empowered workforce that's the key to durable competitive advantage, regardless of what industry you're actually in. And that is, people are at the center of our mission to empower every individual and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And technology can be helpful in that journey to transform an organization. But it really is about the people. And I'd like to start by asking a question of you, which is, what are you trying to achieve in your organization? What is the transformation you're trying to drive? And quick question, logistical question, Jen, are you seeing the Teams notifications popping up on my screen, or does the screen look okay to you?
No, it looks okay.
Okay, great. So I want to start by asking, what do you want to achieve? What's the actual business objective you're trying to drive, or the cultural initiative you're trying to support in your organization? Because it generally will fall into one of several categories: trying to create a high-performing organization, fostering culture, shared values and expectations, navigating market disruptions or technological shifts, and really harnessing the knowledge and creativity of your workforce for the next great idea. And one of the transformations that many of us are considering at this point in time is the transformation to the era of AI. How do we upskill and move our workforce into a place where they can take advantage of AI to achieve even more? But while AI will help amplify human creativity and ingenuity, in the end, it is the people who matter. And the research is super clear that regardless of what objective you're trying to drive, an engaged workforce will help you get there. Whether you're trying to, you can see research across productivity, workforce retention, company profitability, and bottom line KPIs like customer satisfaction. All of them improve with engaged employees. So let's turn the attention to you and your role. What is the role of a communicator in this world that we're in today? I believe communicators have a critical role because you are the change makers for your organization. You're what's driving the change and the transformation that your organization is trying to achieve. So I believe it's an opportunity for communications as a profession to really elevate itself to be change agents and change drivers in an organization, and doing what's necessary to support the organization in achieving its objectives. In order to do that, we have to move beyond thinking of communications as simply sending messages and counting how many eyeballs saw those messages. It's nice to know how many people saw something. It's more important to know, how did they feel about it? How did they change their mindset? What behaviors did they change? How did you actually move the needle to a core KPI, cultural, or business objective? Let's take a quick look at some of the insights and analytics that will allow you to actually demonstrate and prove the change that communications can drive. So we're going to start with a demo of how AI and analytics can help you measure and improve effectiveness. This is basically at the end of the story, really. This is what we want to get to, is the ability to see and demonstrate these kinds of metrics in our organization. What I'm showing you here are network analytics available in Viva Engage. And these network analytics do give you the ability to see common communications metrics, like how many people have I reached? How many people have been engaged? How many people are viewing, commenting, and reacting on messages? And even to look at it across channels. And this data is representative of what we see at Microsoft, for example, where we are a heavily email-centric organization. So we see a lot of the views of communications coming from Outlook, for example. And we're also providing benchmarks to help you understand how your results compare to peers across industries. So we can see on the left, for example, that Microsoft right now has an engagement rate that's really at about the middle line. We have organizations and customers who are using Engage to drive far higher levels of engagement even than Microsoft. We can also start looking at the effectiveness of our announcements that we're driving through our communications channels. So we can see, for example, over the last 28 days, over 2,600 announcements were sent with a time to first view of less than a minute, reaching about 94% of the intended audience and driving about 20% engagement. So we can see those kinds of metrics. But now we can also see, what conversations did we start? And because that's a signal into how we're starting to change the way people talk and think. So we can see, for example, the top conversations across our organization, and we can look at sentiment and themes to see how people are feeling and the changes we're driving. Sentiment and theme analysis is a particularly effective tool for communications because it lets you see and it lets you listen to your organization in a way that really hasn't been feasible before. It's not practical for a communicator to comb all of the communications and messages across the organization and see what people are talking about. But with sentiment and theme analysis, we're able to provide privacy protected deep analytics into what people are saying in public spaces in your organization. So this data, for example, shows that AI has detected that many people are talking about empowering women. And in fact, that's a good thing because this was at the end of a campaign for Women's History Month. And so it was exciting to see that we were actually driving a number of conversations around empowering women. You'll also see right next to that there's a theme for employee resource groups. We had just kicked off a campaign helping employees connect with people in employee resource groups to support diversity, equity, and inclusion. And people were starting to talk about that. So we're really able to start seeing the downstream impacts of our communications and also start mapping them to key business outcomes. For example, employee retention. We can see, for example, that employees are retained who use Viva Engage because Engage helps them connect with coworkers, leaders, news, and information across the organization and makes them feel more part of the mission, more included, and more engaged and activated to contribute to that mission. So this data is representative of what we see across customers, that Engage drives employee retention. And I wouldn't be so bold to say that a tool causes people to stay at an organization, but the tool allows the organization to engage employees. And it is that intent to engage employees that really drives metrics like employee retention. So what we've seen here is that we need to shift to a world where we can drive change and measure that change, not just by looking at how many eyeballs have seen our communications, but the downstream impacts, the minds we've changed, the conversations we've started, and the behaviors we've altered. This is a big shift from the traditional world of communications. I haven't met a single communicator who's told me they've got all the tools and resources they need to do their job. Most communicators are stuck in strategies dating back to the 1990s and tactics that center on publishing rich content to intranets and driving awareness with email blasts and newsletters. And these tools are still critical components of a modern communication strategy, but on their own, they're insufficient to really reach and engage today's workforce. We need modern communications tools that break the mold, that are not just top-down communications, talking at our audience, but multi-directional conversations that engage and talk with our audience. So we get signal back about how they're feeling and how our message is landing. We need to go beyond sending communications just in one channel like email or an intranet and reach people in all of the channels that they use, in all of the applications, across Teams, for example, which email doesn't reach, and across devices and experiences. One thing we hear loud and clear from customers is that employees are complaining of information overload and noisy communications. And it's not necessarily the number of communications that are really the problem. It's the fact that they interrupt employees. When an email lands in an inbox, it is interruptive. It causes distraction, and that distraction is costly. We're going to see how we can use new tools to create multi-speed communications that get information to the right audience at the right time. And at the right pace so that we as communicators are able to distinguish between what needs to be seen immediately, eventually, or optionally. And users have control over what they're seeing, where, and when. The first set of shifts that we've talked about have really been about the tactics of communication. These next few shifts are about the content of our communications. We need to take lessons from consumer social media and external communications that show us how we can more effectively engage today's workforce. The first is to move from text-heavy content to multimedia content, leveraging video and images to share our messages, and to move from communications coming only from official channels to communications coming from everyone in the organization, communications that are cascaded through leadership and managers and made relevant to the audience, communications that start from the ground up. And finally, communications that that are multimodal, meaning we're not just using one form of communication like an email blast or a newsletter, but we're using other forms to engage our employees, like events, social campaigns, etc. Oh, and there is one more. From moving from communications being just getting the message out today to really getting a message out that can serve a greater purpose. And I'll tell you a little bit about what I mean here, and we'll see more in a moment. But with the email, you get your targeted audience right away. But then what happens if someone joins the organization in a week or a month? They don't have the benefit of that communication that was sent. Or what if that communication might actually be valuable to people outside of your target audience? There might be people in other parts of the organization who could benefit from the work that you're communicating about. We need to create communications that serve a broader purpose than just communicating at that one point in time. And finally, all of this becomes possible because AI and analytics really help us accelerate our effectiveness as communicators. So I've laid out a big shift here, a big shift from traditional tactics dating back to the 1990s to tactics that are informed and inspired by the effective communications that happen in the external and consumer world today. We're going to spend the rest of this talk talking about how you can actually achieve these goals. And as we go through the demonstrations and the discussions, you'll see how these multi-faceted shifts really light up. So Viva Engage is the tool in the Microsoft 365 cloud that connects people across the organization. It connects leaders and employees across working groups, across business silos, across the organization to communicate and engage at scale, to shape culture, to build community, and to share knowledge and experience. And you're doing this because you want to activate your employees. You want to spark their desire to lean in and apply their energies, talents, expertise, and ideas to the objectives of your organization. So this is really the key tool that lets you achieve what we talked about at the very beginning, which is engaging your employees to actually drive your business objectives. And Viva Engage allows you to activate employees through three major outcomes. First, empowering leaders and communicators to actually reach and engage employees at scale across the organization. Second, by building effective communities that support your business objectives and employee experience. And third, by providing a place where you can find knowledge, experts, and answers faster, where people can come together and share best practices, and the organization can harness the collective knowledge of the organization. In today's discussion, since we're focused on communication, we're going to focus heavily on the first outcome, but if time allows, we'll also take a look at the second and third outcomes as well, because they also can support specific communications objectives. But we're going to focus first on communications. And as we dive into this, I do want to say one thing here. If there's one thing you take away from today's discussion, I want it to be this, that you can achieve the objectives of communications, communicators, and leaders without having to actually change your end user behavior. One of the common questions I get from customers is, how do I drive employees to go to yet one more application, to yet one more destination to get information? That often didn't prove effective with intranets. Employees didn't go there as often as we wanted them to. And the answer to that question is you don't have to. As you're going to see with Viva Engage, what happens in Viva Engage doesn't stay in Viva Engage. It reaches people across Outlook and Teams in the applications they're using every single day. So the end user doesn't have to change their behavior. Only the communicator, the person with intent, needs to use Viva Engage to initiate the communication. All of the downstream engagement and analytics and insights come from people who are still using Outlook and Teams. Also, Viva Engage can stretch across organizational boundaries. Many of our customers have more than one tenant representing their organization, and Viva Engage supports multi-tenant communications which is particularly helpful for conglomerates, for mergers and acquisitions, etc. And of course, Viva Engage is built on Microsoft 365, which provides all the security, compliance, and privacy controls you need for an enterprise. And it's powered by Copilot and AI, which we'll see lots of examples of to accelerate the effectiveness and impact of your work. So let's dive in to start looking at the use of Viva Engage to empower leaders and communicators to reach and engage and listen at scale. I'm going to start with a demo that really illustrates how, with Viva Engage, you can actually reach and engage your audience across the apps they use every day. So this will take us at sort of from an end-to-end scenario of sharing an announcement to getting analytics back on the engagement. Then we'll break it down and talk about the steps you can take to get to this outcome. So we'll start with Megan. Megan is a communicator at Contoso, and she is getting ready to announce the launch of Copilot at Contoso. This is a really significant announcement that affects every employee. So she starts in company news and events, which is a communications channel that includes every employee. She posts a short message with a call to action to join the Copilot adoption community. And she does this by posting as the director of IT, Nestor Wilkie. Importantly, Viva Engage supports delegates to post on behalf of others. She adds a video to knowing that video and images double the engagement on communications. And importantly, she makes this an announcement so that it will be sent to every employee. While Engage supports saving this post as a draft or scheduling it for publication later, she's ready to publish it now. So Megan, on behalf of Nestor, has posted an announcement incorporating media to drive greater engagement. And this announcement is now going to all members of this channel, which is in fact all employees at Contoso. And it's going to reach them in the apps they use. This is where we see you don't have to tell users to go anywhere. Let's start with Adele. Adele is a Teams user. She's in the middle of a chat with Alex, and a notification appears that tells her Nestor has sent an announcement. She clicks on the notification, she sees the announcement, she can play the video in line, she can react, and she can add her comments. Adele, for example, has used Copilot outside of work and is really excited to try it at work. And then she can get right back into the flow of her work. She's never left Teams. Now let's check out Alex. Alex is an Outlook user, so he receives the announcement in his inbox. The announcement renders in full fidelity, so he can actually play the announcement in his inbox. He can engage with that announcement, he can engage with it, and he can read other employees' comments. So he sees that Adele is excited and he agrees strongly, so he is going to find a custom reaction to really indicate his support. And then he adds a comment of his own. All of this without leaving his inbox. And one of the things I'd like you to note here is that Alex received only one message. He did not receive the announcement and then another message when Adele replied. It is all one message that is dynamically kept up to date. So it is not, so the additional engagement is not generating additional email noise. Now let's turn our attention to Patty. Patty is actually the leader of the organization. She's the CEO. She also works in Outlook, so she sees a similar notification that she is able to engage with. And she knows as a leader, by leaning in and engaging in conversations, she can drive particularly great impact. So she thanks the team and mentions Nestor specifically in order to recognize his contribution to the launch of Copilot. This means a lot to employees when leaders lean in. Nestor is working in teams and he gets a notification and sees Patty's comment. It bolsters his confidence, makes him feel recognized and appreciated. And our data shows that when leaders lean into conversations, the employees in those conversations remain almost 10% more engaged for 2 months after that one leader engagement. Leader engagement is a big deal and drives huge impact. Now let's circle back to Megan. Megan, you might remember, is our communicator. She's in Viva Engage and she is able to track the conversation and the replies that are happening. So she sees all of the new engagement that's come from Adele and Alex and Patty. And she's also able to view analytics on the conversation. Now, this announcement has just been sent. We've only seen a few people engage so far, so it's just getting started. But we can see that she's able to see engagement by platform and conversation trends and comments. And as more comments and reactions come in, AI will kick in and start helping her analyze sentiment and themes in those comments. So even if a conversation has thousands of comments, a communicator can use AI to understand the general sentiment and theme of those comments. So let's take a look at this with instant replay and call out a few of the key things we saw. First, we saw Megan, and she needed to share an announcement with everyone in the organization. So she did it in a community called Company News and Events. And that is the all company community that's part of Viva Engage by default, just renamed and rebranded and used as a company-wide communications channel. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. We saw, and by the way, that community is restricted so that only communicators can post, and Megan is a communicator. We saw that delegates can create posts on behalf of others. Megan was able to create a post on behalf of Nestor. It's super easy to add images and video to increase engagement. And announcements can be sent to reach everyone in the organization across the apps they use. We saw that Teams users receive the announcement in Activity. Outlook users receive the announcement in their inbox. The content renders richly, including images and video. Anyone can engage, and that engagement doesn't create additional email noise. So that's those are some of the, and then at the end, Megan was able to dive in and look at insights to understand how people are engaging with the post, to gauge sentiment, and to view activity per channel. So hopefully that's an inspiring overview of what you can achieve very, very easily. And let's now break it down and talk about the specific steps you can take with Viva Engage to set yourself up for success. So we're going to look at 5 major steps. How you can establish the channels and audiences you need to reach people, how you can create the right content that engages today's workforce, how you can reach your audience while minimizing noise and interruption. This will be a really interesting discussion for you all, I think. How you can engage leaders and employees to amplify your messaging and activate employees to participate. And finally, how you can leverage AI, listening, and analytics to improve your effectiveness. So we'll look at each of these 5 areas and give you some really prescriptive guidance on what you can do. We'll start with establishing audiences. As a communicator, you need to reach certain people. We'll call those audiences, we'll lowercase a group of people. And the way you define that group of people in Viva Engage starts with communities. Viva Engage has an out-of-box community called All Company that includes everyone in the organization by default. You can rename that company to create a branded company-wide news channel and use that to share news and events owned by communications. It's the easiest thing you can do with Engage. Rebrand, rename the community, and restrict it so that only communicators can share, can start new threads. When you restrict a community, the communicators can post news and information, and everyone can engage with those threads, but non-communicators aren't able to start brand new threads that reach everyone in the organization. Then you can start creating additional communities to designate other communications channels and communities in your organization. We'll see some examples of that in just a moment. And you can define the membership of those communities to make sure that the right people are getting your communications. Finally, you can establish private communities for divisions and teams so that information can be shared and amplified in many parts of your organization without creating noise for everyone else in the organization. And you can assign audiences to leaders. So let's take a look at this in just a little bit more detail here. We saw first an example of taking the all company community, rebranding it and renaming it to be an organization-wide communications channel. When Yammer first came to market more than 15 years ago, they had the all company community established where everyone could start conversations. It was like the company-wide water cooler. But as you start using Engage more for communications, that channel that everyone belongs to can become exceptionally noisy for employees if anyone is able to start a thread there. So we encourage you to make that your communications channel for the entire organization and create other spaces for employees to connect with each other. The audience of all company automatically includes everyone in your organization. If someone joins or leaves your organization, they're added or removed automatically. And people cannot unsubscribe. This community will reach everyone in that community. And I encourage you to configure it to be restricted so that, again, only admins can post. Now, I talked about the next level. I mentioned the next level of communities, which is really to start breaking down communities so they mirror your organization, your business divisions, your functions, and your regions. So, for example, this is a screenshot of a community for employees who work in Canada. That would be an audience that probably would receive specific types of communications. There might be a community for a large department or division, for example. And you configure these and mark them as official so that they're known to be an officially sanctioned space for communication. And the audience of these communities you can manage in a couple of ways. You can let users visit the community or join the community on their own, i.e. opt in, or you can add members in bulk by uploading a CSV file to add members in bulk. And then those members can opt out if they want to. And as you start creating more and more communities, you'll find it starts to be helpful to make more of those communities private. And the reason is, if you think about a cascade of communications where a business objective is launched and then leaders start amplifying that communication to their organizations, by having those organizations be private communities, the noise from each other's communities don't overwhelm people outside of those organizations. And then we're gonna talk soon about leader storylines. We haven't seen this yet, but we will soon. Leaders in Viva Engage can have the ability to reach an audience from their storyline. A storyline is like LinkedIn inside of the organization. It's a place where you can reach and engage your coworkers, people across the organization. And if you are a leader, you are able to be given an audience to ensure that what you share on your storyline reaches your audience. That audience can be any existing group in your organization. So many customers have distribution lists, for example, that they've been using to email their organizations today. Those DLs can simply be made the audience for the leader in Viva Engage. And the audience gives the leader superpowers. It lets them reach their audience with posts. It lets them reach them immediately. It lets leaders reach their audiences immediately with announcements. And it gives the leader audience analytics, the ability to listen to their scope of the organization and understand sentiment and themes. One of the common questions I get from customers as we talk about establishing channels is, how do I enforce membership? How do I assign members so that they stay in the audience and stay in the channel all the time? This is something that is a straightforward concept, which is you have to simply make sure the membership of the group that's backing your community or backing your audience has managed membership. And there's several ways to do that. One is, and this is getting a little technical here, so if this might be something you'd work with your technical teams to achieve. You can create what are called dynamic groups. And dynamic groups are based not on a list of individual people, but based on a rule. For example, the Contoso Canada community could be based on a rule that every employee whose region equals Canada is made a member of this group. And it's kept dynamically up to date as that data is changed in Intra ID, which is the directory for the organization. A second option is a tool called Group Membership Management. It's an open source tool that we provide. Your technical team can help you implement it. And it does let you set up business rules that drive the membership of groups that back your communities and back your leaders' audiences. So this is something we can help you out with when you get to the point of implementation. What I'd really like you to know is it is possible to establish channels using either communities or storylines, and the membership of those channels, those audiences, can be opt-in, opt-out, or assigned, where it's like Hotel California. You can check in anytime you like, but you can never leave. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. You're in that audience all the time. Okay, so back to our guide slide here. This we've already talked through here. These are the things you can do, and the bottom line recommendation here is that you should use communities and leader audiences to create communications channels and these communication channels can support a broad range of comm scenarios, from the entire organization to specific divisions, departments, teams, to regions, to job functions, etc. Wherever you need as a communicator to reach an audience, this is the set of tools you have at your disposal for it. And again, we will be ready to help you and guide you to success in this. So we'll move on from here. You've defined your audience. Now let's talk about how we can leverage proven strategies from external and consumer communications and marketing to really create compelling content that will reach our users. How do we create better content? We're going to start with one of the newest and most amazing capabilities, which is actually to use Copilot to help you engage effectively. So let's take a look at how we can use Copilot to engage here. I've invited a colleague of mine, Christy, to demonstrate Copilot in Viva Engage. So give me a moment here, and I'm going to start sharing. And Jen, please shout out if the audio is not coming through, but I'll try and give it a shot here now.
Engage Copilot helps you tap into the power of AI to communicate in ways that help you feel more connected and more productive at work. Copilot makes personalized suggestions for you to participate in your communities, cross-company initiatives like campaigns, and trending conversations related to your interests. It also suggests subjects backed by Glint People Science that you can communicate about to strengthen employee experience for yourself and for others. For me, Copilot suggests I post into the No Code AI campaign. To inform and inspire my writing, Copilot shares the campaign goal as well as a summary of recent posts. Copilot is right by my side via chat, and I can ask Copilot to brainstorm post ideas with me, specifically for this campaign. But I could always collaborate with Copilot on my own idea too, and I think I'll do that in this case because sharing Engage Copilot is now available to all Microsoft employees seems like a great post for this campaign. Whether you're starting from scratch or bringing your own draft like I did, Copilot can help you brainstorm, write, edit, and reflect to create an authentic, engaging post that aligns with your goals. Skill Pills provide examples of messages that you can send to Copilot to get the ball rolling. You can do even more by getting creative with your chats to Copilot, exploring the power of AI safely with responsible AI productions. Let's say I'd like to add a call to action to the bottom of my post so that I can request feedback of people when they're trying out Viva Engage Copilot. I can make the request of Copilot and it will return to me a nice sentence that I can add to the bottom for exactly that purpose. Add to my post. And with the new Highlight to Select feature, unique to Engage Copilot, you can even collaborate back and forth with Copilot on a specific selection of your post. Copilot doesn't post for you. It's your voice that people want to hear, but it can really help you clarify what you want to say, find the right tone, anticipate feedback, and soon it will also coach engagement best practices like adding an image and tagging relevant coworkers, so your post can be super successful. Through communication, we can express valuable perspectives, celebrate achievements, share knowledge, break down silos, and be part of creating a culture that makes us feel like we belong. That's what Viva Engage is all about. Engage Copilot is your partner and coach for using your voice to share and connect at work.
I'm a huge fan of Copilot, having started to use it inside of Microsoft and having started to see customers in preview using and now GA using it. To me, Copilot really solves a couple of problems. First, it solves the blank page problem, that you're staring at a blank page in Word or in OneNote or in Viva Engage and wondering exactly what I should write. Viva Copilot does give you ideas. It gives you conversation starters. And those conversation starters are based on what people are actually talking about around you. So those conversation starters are giving you tips as to how you can engage. Second, it helps do the first draft. Third, it helps give you feedback on your post. Now, one of the things that you saw in the video that is one of my favorite things to ask Copilot is, what questions will people have about my post? Even if I've written the post completely myself, I use Copilot to say, what am I missing? And Copilot often will have good suggestions for how I can augment my post to make it more effective and proactively answer questions that readers might have. Now, back to sort of the more mundane day-to-day communications tactics here. Viva Engage can support your workflow. It allows you to post on behalf of another user. We saw that earlier, to save drafts and to schedule publication. We'll see examples of all of these things as we continue. You've got the ability to start conversations with discussions, but also using questions, praise, and polls, each of which can drive additional engagement. So as a communicator, if you want to drive more engagement, think about how you can send your message not just as a statement, but as a question, or how you can ask people their opinion through a poll, or how you can recognize someone in your organization with praise. Adding links and files does drive additional engagement, but nothing is more effective than adding a video or an image, or even using a video or image to tell your story completely. Video and images really capture the attention and increase engagement, particularly of today's workforce. And can't emphasize enough how important that is. We have some leaders inside of Microsoft who once a week post a 3-minute video summary of what's going on in their organization. They post it to their storyline so that it's shared with people in their organization and with people across Microsoft who are interested in what that organization is doing. And it literally is them sitting down, turning on their phone or their webcam, and being very casual, non-produced, and authentic. And that is proven to be an exceptionally effective way to transmit a lot of information. Video is a very information-dense medium, and to effectively reach and engage people today. We also just introduced a new capability called articles that let you create richly formatted content with inline video and images. So let's take a look at the new articles capability. Here, Patty is going to update her organization, and rather than doing it with video, she's going to do it with a quick communication, something that you might think of as like a modern newsletter. She's going to add a cover photo, a title, and then pop in some content. And there have been several things happening in the organization recently. So she's going to use our new heading formatting to create a couple of different headings. First, she wants to recognize the giving campaign, which has begun in the organization. And she's going to amplify that giving campaign by sharing her own experience volunteering at a food kitchen and adding media to make that, to really drive that point home. And you can see the media is in line. It's in the middle of the text. And then in addition, a new chief product officer has been promoted. And so Patty is going to announce that in her newsletter as well, and share that out. And once she's done that, she has the option of making this an announcement. And an announcement will reach her audience across channels. So she has the ability to define the audience, for example, everyone in the organization. She has the ability to pick whether to send it by email or Teams. But in this case, she's not going to send it as an announcement. She's just going to post it. And we'll learn more why in a moment. So she has the ability to see how it's going to look in the feed and in the full article view of the content. She has the opportunity to schedule it if she wants to, or to save it as a draft. She's going to go ahead and save it as a draft and come back to it and make sure she's addressed all the points she wants, so she can get back to it in her drafts folder, choose to edit it, or go ahead and post it now. And not surprisingly, this article will now reach her audience across applications as well. So Outlook users will see this article in their inbox. Teams users will see it in their Teams activity feed, and everyone will have the opportunity to see it on Engage itself. So that's articles. And the final point on this content moment is to talk about cascading and amplifying messaging through leaders. And as we see in social media and in external communications and marketing, It is not enough to think that one message will achieve the outcome you're trying to drive. Just seeing an advertisement one time doesn't necessarily make you want to activate and learn more about that product or actually buy it. Instead, what we see is a cascade of messages coming from multiple voices and in multiple formats is the most effective way to reach, engage, and activate audiences in the consumer and external world. We can apply that same logic internally and use our influencers and particularly our leaders to cascade messaging. We'll see some examples of this as we continue on, but conceptually, you can think of the initial message coming from an official channel or a high-level leader, and then that message being reinforced down the chain, so to speak, by leaders closer to me as an employee. And those leaders closer to me make the message more personal and relevant to the work I'm doing. They associate it to our work. They give it context, and that really helps drive impact of that message. So putting this all together, it's definitely time to modernize the content of your internal communications with shorter, snackable, media-rich content and a cascade of messages that add relevance and context. One other point, one other pro tip I'd love to share is actively encourage engagement. Your audiences are generally not used to being able to engage with communications. They're used to receiving a message in Outlook where reply all has been turned off. They don't have the muscle to actually react and engage and contribute their perspective. So consider finishing your posts and your communications with a question. What do you think? What ideas do you have? Are there questions? Is this clear? Actively encourage them to comment on your communication so you can start getting that signal back and start building your audience's muscle and letting them know they do in fact have a voice in the communications, in the multi-directional communications of your organization. Okay, now for what I think is going to be one of the more interesting discussions of this morning, and that is how do we actually reach our target audience while minimizing noise and disruption? In the previous slide, I talked about cascades of communications, which means multiple messages, multiple impressions. We talked about using different forms of content. We're actually talking about sharing more communications, but interrupting less, creating less noise and distraction for your employees. And this is possible only with Viva Engage because it gives you a spectrum of options to identify what needs to be seen immediately, eventually, and optionally. Let's dive in and see what I mean by that. When you share an announcement in a community, and that's what we saw in our first demo where we sent an announcement of launching Copilot, that announcement is sent to community members in Teams, in Outlook, and Engage. It's sent immediately from the communicator, from the author of the post, or from the leader if you're a delegate. If you send a storyline announcement, you have the ability to target the audience you're reaching, and that will be sent to them immediately from the author across applications, again, Engage, Teams, and Outlook. Announcements are what we're used to with email blasts. They reach people, but they reach people not only in email, in Outlook, but also in Teams, also in Engage, and they provide that space for engagement. So announcements are close to what we're used to, but significantly better. But they're still noisy. You can imagine if employees at Microsoft received an announcement from Satya and it landed in our inbox, all work would stop. Their announcements are highly interruptive. So you want to be careful about when you use them. We're doing several things to improve the situation for you. First, we're investing heavily in smart notifications that will decrease noise and distraction for your employees. There's a couple of forms of smart notifications. First, there are notifications that we will send to the app we think a user is in, and we will not send it to another app until they've not seen it for a period of time. So for example, community announcements go to a user in Teams, and only if that user hasn't seen it for 2 hours do we send it to Outlook. Second form is roll-up notifications, which you'll see an increasing number of in Viva Engage, where instead of getting one notification, you get a roll-up of several notifications. And over time, we're going to use AI to really start understanding where a user best engages with their communication. So we can start making notifications truly smart and personalized to reach the right person in the right place at the right time. My guidance to you as communicators is to use announcements only for what needs to be seen immediately, the urgent updates. Send those as announcements. Our data shows that they will reach your audience with an average time to view of about 2 to 4 hours. So within about 4 hours, the bulk of your audience will have seen your announcement. But use announcements sparingly to reduce noise, and then share the rest of those updates that are important but not urgent, as posts. Very much like Patty shared her newsletter through Viva Engage as a post, because your audience will still see that. They will still receive it in Outlook and in Teams. And our data shows the same eyeballs will see that communication, but instead of an announcement within 2 to 4 hours, a post will be seen over 1 to 2 business days. So same audience, same reach, same impact, but significantly less interruptive because you're letting users read it on their own time over a period of 1 to 2 days. And one of the reasons why this is an effective strategy is because we have in Engage what are called daily digests. A daily digest is a roll-up of communications that are targeted at you because you're a member of a community, you're in a leader's audience, you joined a community, you followed another user. They're targeted communications that you have not seen. So it's like a smart newsletter. And this is where we go beyond traditional newsletters, because daily digests are actually smart enough to know what you have and haven't seen and what is targeted to you versus what's not, so that you get the most efficient digest of communications once a day to help you catch up with what you haven't seen. So those daily digests are like the backstop. When someone shares a post, it shows up in feeds. So if people do go to Viva Engage or say to Viva Connections or to your intranet, they might see that post ambiently. But if they don't, they will get it in their daily digest. And that's your backstop. And our data again shows that that's effective at reaching the same audience within about 1 to 2 business days. And finally, if you do have people coming to Viva Engage, you can boost the prominence of posts using by pinning posts to communities and featuring posts, which boosts their visibility in feeds and in digests, in fact. So you do have the ability to significantly reduce noise and distraction for your communications by sending fewer announcements, more posts, and leveraging private communities and digests. Because again, as you're sharing more, but you're sharing them in scoped audiences, those audiences aren't getting noise from other audiences. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, the fourth big pillar of our guidance for communications is to engage leaders and employees to cascade messaging, scale culture and vision, and activate participation. So here's where we're going to really, here's where we're going to take a look at how leaders can actually cascade communications. We'll take a look at a quick demo here. My slides are going a little bit wild. So here we have Karen Blair, and Karen is on her storyline. Again, Karen is a leader in the organization, and Storyline is like LinkedIn inside your organization. It's a place where individuals can share updates, perspectives, and experiences with coworkers and with followers across the organization. And leaders can use Storyline to reach and engage their audiences at scale. They can share thoughts and vision, celebrate milestones, and add perspective to business and cultural meetings. So Karen, for example, shared a post about a recent office gathering, recognized the work of one of her team members, and amplified messaging around Mental Health Awareness Month. Now, Storyline can also be used to share announcements and news. So let me jump over to, whoops, my demo seems to be misbehaving here. Let's see if I can find it. Give me one moment, I apologize. Well, I'm not going to be able to find the right slide. I apologize. Hopefully we'll find it later. But the bottom line is that leaders have the ability through their storyline to take what is a messaging campaign in your organization and really personalize it, make it relevant to their employees, to their audience, again, add context and relevance. A second way that leaders can really spark engagement is through live events. Live events are an opportunity to bring people together at a focused time to talk about specific topics and to really spark engagement. And live events in Viva Engage are a particularly powerful way to reach your employees at scale in an organization. So a live event has a video feed that is live during the event, but people can come back and look at the event on demand afterwards. And it has an open discussion where attendees can ask questions, share thoughts, and get answers. So live events are a wonderful way to bring people together. And I'd like to share a story with you of one of the events we had at Microsoft recently. So you can see just the flow that was used to get people to participate and the way we unlocked the content of this event and made it easily accessible to every employee at Microsoft. So once a month, Microsoft hosts a company strategy series. And the company strategy series is a live event that focuses on a specific part of our strategy. And in early January, we had a company strategy series focused on our AI strategy. Our communications team sent a calendar invite, a placeholder to everyone in the organization. So we had it on our calendars, and we had the opportunity to then to keep track of it and get ready to join. The event was promoted ahead of time. Kevin Scott, our Chief Technology Officer, shared an announcement to our all company community. So this is a real example. He shared an announcement in our all company community telling people the event was going to happen tomorrow, and used a video to sort of give people a teaser of what they were going to talk about. And then the event was hosted in our Senior Leader Connection community, which is a community we have where any employee can come to express thoughts and ask questions of leadership. So so employees joined the event in the community, and the event had a Q&A along the side. Kevin Scott shared thoughts about our AI strategy. Satya answered questions from attendees in real time. And after that event was over, that event was publicized in the employee events and news and events community again. Again, this is our version of the all company community. And down here, we have another announcement from Kevin Scott. This is after the event, saying what happened and providing a link to the recording. And as an Outlook user myself, I received Kevin's announcement in Outlook. So this is another good example of how announcements reach people in the apps like Outlook that they use every day. And I was able to actually jump into the video straight from Outlook. Now, in this event, there were lots of questions that were being asked. So you can see some questions being asked along the side here. I'm going to skip through a couple of slides here. Whoops, there's what I wanted to hit. So there were questions that were being asked and answers that were being provided. And those questions and answers become part of the community that is hosting the event. So after the event, the questions from that event can be carried on. More answers can be given, more engagement can happen, and that knowledge can be captured for other use. So I'm highlighting here a couple of questions that actually came from the event and bubbled up into the community. And this allows that knowledge to be captured and reused. For example, in the event, there was a question about finding resources for Phi 2, which is related to AI, and there were some answers and links that were given. Now watch this. I, as a user, can come back to the community, and I might have missed the event entirely. I have a question about where I can get resources about Phi 2. When I start typing my question, AI guides me to the questions that have best answers already and take me right to that question that was asked during the event that has the answer I'm looking for. So I was able to find an answer super fast because the knowledge that was communicated during an event was unlocked and brought forward to me. Live events are a super powerful way to spark engagement and share knowledge. A related capability are Ask Me Anything events, which allow you to gather questions from employees and respond to them either asynchronously as a text-only event or as part of a live event. Let's take a real quick look at AMAs here so that you understand how they can be used. An AMA, or Ask Me Anything event, has a landing page and that supports moderated Q&A. So anyone can come and ask questions. And if organizers want, they have the ability to approve questions before they get published. People can upvote each other's questions. And you have the option to allow anonymous submission, which we find generates much higher quality questions because it removes it improves the psychological safety of people asking questions that might be a little tricky. And especially when you have moderation, anonymous is perfectly fine to use. So this AMA event allows questions to be submitted, upvoted, and replied to, and the organizers have the ability to get insights on that AMA. Recently, we published a blog post that shares how our own engineering leader at Microsoft, Rajesh Jha, uses AMAs and live events to really engage his workforce. He started doing this at the beginning of our fiscal year to kick off our fiscal year, and now he hosts town halls every 2 months. Before the town hall, he encourages people to submit questions and upvote, and he and his team look at the questions that have been most upvoted. They have anonymous submission enabled, and they have moderation enabled. So they're in control over which questions get published. And they've promised employees that once a question is published, if it's upvoted, they will answer the most upvoted questions. So it's before the event, they gather questions. Then during a live event, Rajesh answers the questions that were submitted by employees. He answers those top voted questions and takes new questions in real time during the event as well. And then after the event, they share a recording of the event and share the resources that were promoted during the event as well. And they're able to see analytics of the event. These types of events, using both AMAs for gathering questions and live events for answering them in real time, has proven so effective for Rajesh that he's now hosting these events every 2 months with his 50,000 person employee base. And the final way to engage leaders and employees is to conduct social campaigns. Social campaigns are like hashtags with superpowers. They let anyone can join and contribute to a campaign. So for example, in this demo environment, we have a campaign. Whoops, oh goodness, that my environment timed out. I'm not going to be able to show you that one. I apologize. Social campaigns allow you to get anyone to participate in the conversation using a hashtag, and whether they and bring those conversations together from across storylines and communities into one place that allows everyone to participate in that campaign. Campaigns are great for promoting diversity initiatives, for driving business objectives, and more. As an example, at Microsoft, we have several campaigns going on for Copilot. We have a Copilot Stories campaign that anyone can use to share stories of how their customers are using Copilot to drive their success and achievement. And we also have a Copilot Tips campaign that allows people to share tips and tricks they've learned about Copilot and how they make it useful in their work. And that campaign has really rallied people to share their experiences more openly than they would have otherwise. Last but not least, and then we're going to break for questions here, we round back out to analytics. And we're going to take a quick spin through the analytics capabilities that allow you to really listen and measure and improve your effectiveness as a communicator. There are several scopes of analytics that are available to you. We have analytics, let's see if I can get this here. We have analytics at the network level. Let me actually do this in the order of the slide here. We have analytics at the conversation level that let you see a specific conversation and measure its reach and engagement. We are adding to that advanced analytics that let you see where people are engaging per channel, sentiment, and themes. We saw that in one of the earlier demos. Storyline analytics let you measure a leader or communicator's effectiveness as a communications channel. It lets you see how a leader's own engagement has moved the needle over time. And community analytics let you look at, gain insights into the engagement at a community level. My personal favorite for analytics is audience analytics. Audience analytics empower you to listen effectively to your audience and to understand what they're talking about through sentiment and theme analysis. So as a leader with an audience, you can understand what's important to them. It's not about how they're responding to you necessarily. It's about what they're talking about. What's the zeitgeist of that audience? And it helps you prioritize how and where you're going to lean in as a leader to drive engagement and to move the needle forward. So audience analytics give you that sentiment and theme analysis to a scope of your organization, to an audience. And network analytics take that up to the network level. And this is what we saw as our very first demo, where we were able to look across our organization and see engagement patterns, the effectiveness of communications, sentiment, and themes. Last but not least, one of the main questions I get about analytics is what analytics matter? And I'd like to answer that, I'd like to go back to the very first slide we have, the slides we had, which was about what are you trying to achieve? The best analytics are not necessarily eyeballs. They're not necessarily click-through rates. They're not even necessarily sentiment and themes, although those are certainly better metrics to understand how people are changing. What you really want to measure is the KPI for the change you're trying to drive. What's the adoption rate of Copilot? Are people feeling more connected to their leaders? Do they feel part of the mission of the organization? Look at your employee surveys, look at your business KPIs, and tie them to your communications initiatives and objectives. We're going to be doing much more with AI over time, and I'm going to skip this slide for now, but I'll give it to you. But you'll see AI showing up in many, many new ways to help you increase the effectiveness of your increase your effectiveness as a communicator, and also help you stay on top of the knowledge and information that's being shared in your organization. So those are the 5 steps we went through: establishing channels using communities and storylines, creating compelling content, especially snackable posts, images, and video, sharing less announcements and more posts to reach your audience while minimizing noise and interruption, engaging leaders to cascade messaging, and leveraging AI and analytics to measure and improve your effectiveness. Along the way, we saw some great examples of the shift that we started off with. We see that communications are truly multi-directional. People are able to react and respond. AMAs and events and campaigns are able to spark people to actually contribute. These communications reach people in the apps they're in: Outlook, Teams, Engage, your intranet, your custom mobile apps, you name it. What happens in Engage will reach your target audience. And because Engage alone allows you to distinguish what's immediate, what's eventual, and what's optional, you're able to share less announcements, more posts, and reach the same audience, knowing that key metric of announcements gets you them in 2 to 4 business hours, posts reach in 1 to 2 business days. Multimedia content is the way to engage your workforce, particularly the younger workforce today, and getting multiple voices to contribute to a message, bringing them in by cascading communications through leaders and bringing in every employee through social campaigns. And rather than thinking of every communication as one more email, think about how you can share that message using other forms of communication: videos, images, questions, polls, praise, events, ask me anything events. There's so many opportunities to spread your wings as a communicator and use the full toolkit that's available for you to reach and engage your audience. And importantly, the communications that we've shared today reach beyond the need of just informing a certain audience today. Those communications stay in the community and in the storyline where they were started, so that when employees join an organization, they can catch up, they can find out what's important, they can harness the knowledge and information that's been shared before they onboarded. And when communications are shared in a public space, like a public community or storyline, those communications are available to people who aren't even in your target audience, but might find your communication valuable to them. So with that, I'm going to round out with one set of quick comments and then get to questions. Microsoft itself has heavily shifted our internal communication strategy to Engage over the last 15 to 18 months. We were an almost exclusively email-centric communications organization up till about 2020, late 2022. And since then, we've leveraged and discovered a lot of our own best practices. We've learned a lot from customers who do it even better than us. And we now are driving executive and employee communications across a whole variety of scenarios. Our leaders communicate more. Satya in the past did not send emails unless there was a really major organizational change, like an acquisition or a merger or something like that. Now he posts almost twice a week to his storyline as posts. So they're not interrupting people, but they're being seen by everyone over time. And that allows him to create a drumbeat of culture and strategic messaging to keep people aware of what matters to the organization. We have leaders hosting Ask Me Anything events like Rajesh that we talked about earlier. And we have lots of network-wide campaigns. In fact, we're just finishing a campaign that was designed to help employees understand what employee resource groups are available to them, to understand where they can connect with peers and coworkers across Microsoft. So that's Viva Engage. We focused today on leaders and communicators. We saw how communities can be used as communications channels, but we will save for another day diving deep into communities. In the knowledge front, today we saw how knowledge, for example, from an event, can be captured in a community and reused through answers through AI to help people connect with experts and find answers quickly. And I am going to give you all of these slides. So I'm going to just run through a couple of resource slides here. If I can find my resource slides. Where did they go? All right, I will find them. My deck is much bigger than I probably. Oh, here we go. I'm going to just give you an idea of what slides you will get. I'm going to give you some specific next steps, like what you can do after today to start driving the change in your organization. And so the first set of things on this slide, the first 5 items are available to every Microsoft 365 customer. If you're a Viva customer, you can dive into leaders and audiences, campaigns, and AMAs. I'm going to encourage you to trial the premium capabilities of Engage. There's 2 ways to trial that across your organization, and to join our Viva Customer Connection Program and our Viva and our Engage customer community. I'll give you all of these resources. And last but not least, to visit our Adoption Center, where you can get all kinds of resources to help drive and support your success. So for a moment, I'm going to leave this slide up. This has a summary of the links I just whipped through, and then I do want to get to Q&A. So Jen, do you want to moderate the Q&A?
Yes, we have a lot of questions, Dan, and this was fabulous. So thank you. I think your content was leading to all of these questions. I'm going to do my best. If we run out of time, everybody, we are going to do our best to post the answers to it out when we post the video for this so that you can see it there. But first question, Dan, and I thought this is a good one. How do we think of Engage versus SharePoint? What's the difference between the two?
Yeah, very common question. I think, as I said in the intro, email and intranets still play an important part in modern communications. They're just not sufficient because they don't generate the engagement and the signal you need to really understand whether you're driving change. So my feeling, and you'll get ask 100 people, you'll get 200 different answers. My feeling is that intranets are particularly well suited for when you have 2 major factors. Rich content and curated destinations. SharePoint pages can have significant capabilities as far as how content actually looks. You can get it close to pixel perfect. Whereas with a tool like Engage, you don't have that much control. So dynamic, rich, sophisticated formatting, SharePoint pages are awesome. And importantly, intranet sites are places where people can go later because you can curate a destination around a specific set of information or communications so that when people need to catch up with something, they have somewhere to go. And when they go there, it's not just a feed of information. It's really been curated by a communicator, by an expert to drive the objective of that particular destination. So for example, sites that are going to have reference materials, that things you're going to come back to regularly, places where people can come to get onboarded, resource sites. So those kinds of things are still super important, and SharePoint is the world's best content management system. When it comes to actual news, you've got a choice. But I do think what we're seeing is that our customers are generally getting significantly richer data back about the changes they're driving by sharing content through the Engage engines, which wrap that content with engagement. And so one very excellent strategy that I would recommend is if you are using SharePoint for your intranet, because it's either where your company's at today, or you need the rich content, you need the multilingual, you need the curated news site, share those links through Engage. Share the links through Engage. You still will have your channels and audiences defined in Engage, so you can do really rich targeting, and you can drive the engagement around that news. Just like if you were to go to LinkedIn to a group and someone shared an article from the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, that news article can be distributed and people can have a conversation about that article. Hopefully that helps.
Second question. Can you describe how we should view Engage and Amplify in corporate comms? Do they work together, or are they totally separate?
Great question. Yeah, so Viva Amplify, for those who don't know, is a tool that is really designed for communicators. It supports orchestrating communications campaigns where you have multiple messages, often multiple collaborators working on messages, rich workflows, and you're trying to get them out through multiple channels. And Viva Amplify supports publishing a publication to SharePoint, to Teams, to Outlook, and soon to Viva Engage as well. And then getting analytics back. And as we're working with customers, what we're seeing at this point in time, as Amplify is fairly new and is evolving rapidly, they're investing significantly in it, is that Amplify can do, if you need the orchestration and the collaboration and workflow, Amplify is definitely where you want to start. The real question is, where do you publish to, right? Because if you're publishing directly to Teams or Outlook, you're doing a blast. You're not getting that engagement. You're not getting that signal back. If, however, you use Amplify to publish through Engage, you can still reach people in Teams and Outlook, but you're going to have all the benefit that the engagement engine wraps around that content. You're going to get rich targeting. You're going to get the ability to share through channels that have personas. You're going to get the insights and analytics back, like the sentiment and themes. So I think in an ideal world for customers who have all of Microsoft's tools, a communicator would use Amplify to create a communication, share it through Engage to reach people in Teams and Outlook. And then the feeds would also show up in Viva Connections, which is sort of the intranet inside of Teams today. And Amplify might also save that same communication to a SharePoint site for reference and future. So there's lots of possibilities with the toolkit, and it's a matter of putting them together in the best way possible. I think the core message today is not that Engage is the only tool you should use. It's to really understand that when you use Engage, you can target your audience, reach them across applications, publish very rich, engaging content, and get a whole bunch of signal back and drive down-level metrics, down-level outcomes like conversations and behavioral change.
So next question, Dan, how is it determined where, so Outlook versus Teams, each particular employee will receive the company announcement? And what if someone uses both of those tools? Great question.
So I was a little bit vague on that intentionally because we're investing in that and we're changing it very rapidly. And the answer is that it's actually a fairly complicated answer, but I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. Community announcements today are being sent to Teams first. And if someone doesn't see it within 2 hours, it then goes to Outlook so that we're not spamming people in two places. And our data has shown that that's actually super effective. We're not, we're meeting the goal of reaching the audience without spamming them with that pretty simple algorithm at this point. Over time, that algorithm will apply, we'll use AI so that we're smarter about where the employee is actually working and sending it to them there first, and or learning where they prefer and engage with content more effectively. But today it's Teams first, 2 hours later it goes to Outlook. In the case of a storyline announcements are in the control of the communicator. So the communicator gets to pick whether it goes to Teams or Outlook. Over time, we will add the smarts into that workflow as well.
And next question, what is the benefit of making a community as official?
Good question. The marking a community as official is really about the perception of that community. It's about the message you're sending, that it is an officially sanctioned place, that it is the authoritative place, the preferred place to achieve whatever the goal of that community is. So I think the tactically, what it does is it puts a blue check mark there. So when people are browsing communities, they can see which ones are official. And when you go to the community, it has the check mark on it, so you know you're an official place. And then finally, when you go to discover communities, one of the filters that you can use is to filter by official communities. So like at Microsoft, we have thousands of communities. And if I'm going to look for a community, I often will filter to the official ones to see what I'm interested in joining.
And this is a really good question, the next one. Dan, I hear this one a lot. What do you do with overly negative, false, or disrespectful comments that are left on announcements?
Great question. Great question. Yeah, and that's something that transparently and honestly, Microsoft deals with ourselves as well, especially in the heated environment of international crises that are affecting us all. And something like 2 billion people on the planet will be part of major national elections in 2024. So there's plenty of opportunity for heated discussion. We are, first of all, working on adding tools to Viva Engage to help organizations respond when those things do happen. Today, there is the ability, first of all, when a comment does actually appear, there's the ability today to delete that message. The author or the delegate can delete it, and the conversation can be closed. If it's really sort of going off the rails, you can close the conversation, which allows people to still react to it, but not add additional comments. That's in the product today. We're also in the product today is a way to notify the organization that a comment has been made. You can report a conversation, and if you're an E5 customer, you can use communications compliance to use AI to detect conversations that are talking about sensitive topics or sharing the wrong kind of information, confidential information, for example. And so there's several ways to detect. And then we are going to be using AI to help guide conversations in the future, so that as a user, if you're posting something, we'll actually be able to proactively say, hey, this is a little touchy, a little dicey. Are you sure you don't want to change your tone or whatever? So there's several things happening in the product. Generally, what we found in the end is it's not a technical problem, it's a cultural problem. You have to make clear to employees that this is a business platform. It may feel like Instagram and Facebook, but it's a business platform. And there are certain values and expectations of an organization that reflect its cultural norms, and people need to adhere to that. That should be part of your usage policy. We have a usage policy that you can implement with Viva Engage that people have to agree to. And you have to have business processes to respond through communications or HR to help people understand when they've gone off the rails and what the potential consequences can be. Another thing that we've done that has helped a lot is and other customers have done this as well, is we've created safe spaces for hot conversations. There's certain categories of conversations that are just like clearly beyond the pale, and those need to be dealt with by HR and communications. But there's also a set of conversations where just certain people want to talk about something and I don't want to hear about it because it's triggering to me or it's noisy to me. So we've created communities for discussions of US political issues, for example. And if a discussion happens somewhere else, we gently point people to that community to carry on the discussion. And that community is muted in the feed. So what the conversations in that community are available to the members of that community, but are not creating noise for someone like me who doesn't want to hear it. So there are several tactics, and we can definitely have a follow-up session on moderation. It is something we're actively investing in. You're going to see a lot more coming very soon, because we definitely understand and we empathize with the challenges of having a large open space. Sometimes people take advantage of that large open space.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, next question. Is all company the only one where no one can unsubscribe? My organization has a few newsletters that people can't opt out of, but the audience differs.
Yeah, so the all company community is the only community that's built in and includes all users and no one can leave. That is true. However, you have the ability to create other communities that behave the same way. You can use intra-ID dynamic groups, or you can use group membership management to enforce the membership of a community in whatever way you want, really. We can support any business need. But all companies the only one that does it by default. And that's why we generally encourage customers at this point in time to treat all company as the most important news that everyone should see. Because if it's an announcement, it's going to go to everyone right away. And if it's a post, it's going to get to everyone in the Daily Digest tomorrow. So really use all company sparingly, and have more targeted channels for specific newsletters and audiences.
Are the Engage articles archived and able to be searched by a keyword for the next month, for instance? How, where, and are these articles stored on an intranet, for example?
Great question. So articles are just a new post type. So they live in Viva Engage and they behave like all other Viva Engage posts. So you can search for them in Engage and find them. You can create links to them on your intranet, for example. SharePoint has this really cool feature that I love called the news link, where you can create effectively a news page that's actually linking somewhere else. So you could create a SharePoint news link to a particularly interesting article on Engage as a way of integrating Engage and your intranet, for example. Oh my gosh, I've gone off the track enough. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling. I'm going ahead here. Let me go back. So it's about are these Engage articles archived and able to be searched? How, where, and where are they stored?
Oh yeah, okay. So yes, yes, you can search for them. Yes, you can link to them from SharePoint. Here's two tips that I think are particularly going to be useful for you in this. One is, if you're going to have a series of articles, like a series of newsletters, for example, consider using a storyline. A storyline can have an audience. It can be followers if you're an M365 customer. It can be an actual audience if you're a Viva customer. And you can share those articles as a series and just make the storyline not a human being's storyline. You can create a fake user account. Some companies call them ghost accounts or service accounts, non-person accounts, that will share that content out as a series. And then that storyline becomes a destination people can go back to and find that stuff super easily. So that's something we see a lot of customers, including many parts of Microsoft, doing. They have non-person user accounts that share certain types of communications, and that becomes the destination when you want to go back and refind. The second tip I'll share just for this group is we are working very hard on getting all of Viva Engage content into Microsoft Search. So I think by the time we get together next year, it'll be super easy to find Engage content from Microsoft365.com or from SharePoint or anywhere that uses Microsoft Search.
Dan, thank you so much. I know we did not address all questions here, so we will take a look at the questions. We're going to try to answer those posted on our blog site where the recording will live. The other way too is just reach out to your account teams. Your account teams can help direct you to those of us who could potentially help you address some of the questions as well. But Dan, thank you. Fantastic. I think maybe we might consider doing some more of these. It was very rich and insightful.
Thank you all for including me, and thank you all for attending today. I know this was a long event, and I appreciate everyone for hanging on. Have a great day.
Thank you. And just to follow up on what Jen said for the Q&A, because I got a bunch of questions after, keep popping. What I'll do is I'm going to go through, and in the blog post, there's a comment section, and I'm going to iteratively go through and address those. I'll provide links to documentation as I go. and I'll include that in the resources on a building. But it'll be iteratively because I do have a day job. So thank you.
I'll help you
And
with
thank
that,
you, Dan.
Michael, and we'll get the slides to you all as well.
Awesome. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.